Tahawwur Rana, one of the most wanted men in India, is now going to be flown back to India after his final appeal in the US Supreme Court was rejected. Who was Tahawwur Rana? He was one of the masterminds of the 26/11 terror attacks. He'd gone through a series of appeals in various American courts, trying to avoid being deported to India, being extradited to India, rather. He will now be extradited after his final plea was rejected. This is breaking news, covered first by NDTV. This is not just a big win for India, but it is a big win for those who have sought justice. Remember, more than 160 people lost their lives in the 26/11 Mumbai terror attacks. Now, before we go back to our correspondents, I'd just like to introduce or explain two of the key individuals over here. Tahawwur Rana, the man whose image that you see on the screen, and David Coleman Headley, who also had a key role. The two worked together. Tahawwur Rana, who you see on your screen, was arrested in October 2009 in Chicago. He went on to face a trial, but this was a man who ran a quote-unquote respectable business. This was the man who immigrated to Canada earlier on in 1997. He obtained citizenship there in 2001. He later settled in Chicago. He opened up what was called the First World Immigration Service, and he got in touch with David Coleman Headley, who I'll talk about in a moment, and he facilitated and ensured the logistics that enabled David Coleman Headley to travel to India, where David Coleman Headley carried out reconnaissance, which was used by the terrorists on 26/11 when they attacked India. I'm just going to go back to Shiv, who joins us now. Shiv, I've spoken briefly about Tahawwur Rana, but we can't talk just about Rana unless we talk about his link and his work with David Coleman Headley. So for the benefit of our viewers, who was Headley? Who is Headley?
David Coleman Headley, continues to be, a very, very mysterious figure, even after all of these years. He went by the name Dawood Gilani, a person of half Pakistani parentage, a person who the mythology said had two different colors of eyes. But he is the figure who actually conducted the on-ground reconnaissance within Mumbai, Vishnu, in the run-up to the 2008 26/11 attacks, conducting a recce of all the target sites, whether it was the Trident, whether it was the Taj, whether it was the Kabad House, Nariman House, etc. He was the person who actually did it. Now, remember, the investigative reports, the dossier, provides a very detailed picture of who this man is. David Coleman Headley had traveled extensively between India and Pakistan. He had multiple passports allowing him to travel abroad as well. And the reason why we're talking about Headley today, while NDTV has broken this news first, is that the man who facilitated every single aspect of whether it was a fake passport, whether it was false identities, whether it was forged domicile papers, whether it was travel tickets, whether it was contacts within Mumbai who facilitated SIM cards and things like that. That person was Tahawwur Hussain Rana. Tahawwur Hussain Rana was the immediate link with the ISI. So Tahawwur Hussain Rana in many ways was the handler who was in touch with people in the ISI in Karachi or elsewhere. And David Coleman Headley was the foot soldier, the person who actually conducted or executed the reconnaissance aspect, the intelligence gathering aspect. It was David Coleman Headley under guidance, under logistical facilitation from Tahawwur Hussain Rana, who actually conducted the target dossiers, and the information that was gleaned by Headley with Rana's support is finally what went to the Lashkar-e-Taiba in Pakistan. And then that attack by those 10 attackers, including Ajmal Amir Kasab, happened a few months later. If you look at the entire timeline, it was not a long, extended operation. It was a tight operation. Evidence suggests that it was conducted fairly economically. Not large amounts of money were actually spent. In the few trips that David Coleman Headley actually made to Mumbai, he was able to gather an enormous amount of information that was actionable for Kasab and the others when they finally struck on 26/11. So Tahawwur Rana is the man that India is hoping to now get.
Let's talk
India
a little bit more,
has lost all hope of getting David Coleman Headley. That's the reason why Rana is so important.
In fact, we'll talk about that particular angle. There was a plea bargain which David Coleman Headley has struck in the American legal system. But I want to talk a little bit about David Coleman Headley. Besides what Shiv mentioned, a couple of details which, for our viewers, David Coleman Headley was a terrorist in the sense that he was directly trained by the Lashkar-e-Taiba. He'd been radicalized through a Pakistani military officer who was married to a second mother. He was trained in weapons handling. He had been trained in training camps as well. And he was very much a military operative in a sense when he was involved in what Shiv described as the reconnaissance missions. The question for him is, how could he get into India? How could he be in Mumbai where he would get into those areas, measure distances, look at times, and then provide that with military precision for the terrorists who came in from Pakistan? So that's what David Coleman Headley did. Tahawwur Rana ensured that he got a visa, ensured that he had the logistics that he required, ensured that he could get into India, which he did. So that's how the two worked together. David Coleman Headley is still in an American jail. However, it's murky over there. There's been a lot which has been said about a double life, whether he was some sort of an informant for an American agency, whether he turned approver, and why the process to get him back didn't work. But Tahawwur Rana is on his way back. My colleague Ghazali joins us as well. Ghazali, I think the question in the minds of all of our viewers is this: when? When does Rana come back? Is there any clarity?
See, there is no clarity whether this is going to be the last legal option he has availed, as Shiv was rightly pointed out, that unless, because even till last month it appeared in Feb end when there was no application filed by him. Before 27th of Jan, when this last application was filed, it appeared that Indian agencies are working with their counterparts there in the United States. They're monitoring the case and very soon he'll be brought back. But agencies hinted that perhaps that was not the last legal option. Even now, it is not clear whether that would be the last legal option. But as of now, there has been no word from the Indian agencies as such that whether he will be brought back as soon as possible.
Shiv, I think the larger question over here, now that we've established what Rana did, what Headley had done as well, is justice, and closure. I would suggest that the reason we are reporting this in the way that we are is because that's what the ultimate goal is: justice for those who lost so much on those days, right?
Very true, Vishnu. But even as far as justice is concerned, all these years later, even if we put aside all the disclaimers over how much time has passed, what would really be the efficacy of getting someone like a Rana into Indian agency hands at this time? Does it bolster India's case even more than it already has been bolstered? I'm somewhat skeptical about that. What it will give India is, I think, a symbolic sense of being able to provide some closure, because this is the man that India has pointed at consistently from the start. India has built up, an extraordinary dossier, not just against this man, not just against David Coleman Headley, but at least 17 individuals, named individuals, including Zakir Rahman Lakhvi, who are sitting in Pakistan right now, who have been semi-proscribed by the United Nations, but continue to live free lives. So even with India's biggest possible agency effort to build evidence against the ISI and the LET and the Jamaat-ud-Dawa and all the other fronts for all these years, nothing has actually come off it. So the journalist in me is a little skeptical in terms of what technically more we can achieve with this guy in Indian agency hands. But I think you're right. It does provide some kind of closure because he is the face. Tahawwur Rana is the face ultimately, the man who sort of held the puppet strings from the United States, getting those visas, having access to elaborate legal support through his entire extradition. Even now, when I was reading the news break that NDTV just put out, Vishnu, he's, even though this is supposed to be his last resort or his last legal recourse, He's put out, another petition in the Supreme Court there saying, I will be tortured and therefore you must not extradite me. So it's not just about double jeopardy. It's not just a technicality of being tried again on the same thing, which is actually quite powerful within the US legal system. He's talking about torture. And I don't want to pronounce any conspiracy theories, but in the atmosphere of what's been happening as far as the US and India diplomatically under the Biden administration with Gurpatwant Pannu, etc., there is an atmosphere of suspicion at one level between the two countries, and he may be trying to manipulate that.
Shiv, that's an important point. Also, for those who may be wondering whether his coming to India would actually, give us more evidence on the role of the ISI or the Pakistani military, while that may eventually take place, depending on how he's interrogated over here, what he chooses to say, the role of the ISI is more than clear in this, right, Shiv? We are no longer, and Ghazali, we are not looking for evidence to prove the involvement of the ISI. One of the reports, one of the documentaries that we'd done, NDTV, many, many years ago, all those years back, had audio recordings, minute by minute, between the terrorist handlers sitting in Pakistan and the terrorists, and getting clear directions on what was happening all around them. So the role of the Pakistan army, not just the ISI, the two are essentially one and the same in many senses, has been established. It just goes on, perhaps, Shiv, to establish what we all know, that Pakistan has been and perhaps still does remain an epicenter of terrorism. Shiv, go ahead.
Vishnu, was that for me?
Yes.
Yeah, no, you're right. I agree with every word you've just said. The tapes that came out very, very soon after the 26/11 attacks, Vishnu, including the scenes that we're looking at right now, those very, very disturbing scenes of the NSG commandos being lowered onto the Kabad house. We heard audio of directions being provided at that time. There were live instructions being provided to the terrorists in all of these locations. The voices and the samples that were provided in at least, if I'm not mistaken, 4 dossiers which contained proven voice samples identifying the people. It wasn't even an open-ended dossier. And ultimately, the final dossier that was sent to Pakistan, which was sometime in 2012, 2013, contained what I believe to be the most exhaustive evidence of the ISI's direct involvement, not just facilitatory, not just in terms of financing, but direct involvement, with colonel level, brigadier level officers actually involved in the execution. And the nuts and bolts of the actual training that was given to these terrorists. So whether Tahawwur Rana is going to be able to come back and point a finger needs to be seen.